Well, ladies and gentlemen of the Liquid Football Podcast fan base, we have taken a few weeks off, as you may have noticed, from just general scheduling conflicts and all this sort of stuff. And it's nice to see that even before the Premier League running, football's been absolutely fine. Nothing as bad has happened, nothing crazy has happened, except for four football clubs shitting the bed and sacking their managers before the Premier League running. We might as well start with that then, Dave, if we will, in terms of our opening business on this podcast. Which of the which of the sackings do you think that we've had in recent has been the mildest of shocks? Because I think there's a
Graham
strong
Graham
argument.
Graham Potter.
Shall we
I
start
mean,
with
has it
Chelsea? Right.
have Chelsea not sacked two managers this season? Tuchel and Potter.
They have, yeah. They are one of, I think, three clubs that have sacked two managers this
Hmm.
season. I think Southampton is the other one.
Leeds have sacked Jesse Marsh.
Hmm.
Southampton, I don't even know who the Southampton manager is at this point. I've just
Hazelhütten and the late great Nathan Jones.
there you go. So who's in charge of Southampton now?
I can't remember the guy. I think it's
See,
some.
even you even you can't remember.
No, he was a
Ruben
coach.
Selles. Yeah, Ruben Sells or
Ruben
Sellers,
Sellers,
whatever.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
can't
he
keep
was
up.
he was part of the coaching setup at Southampton under Jones, and apparently the Southampton like ownership like him, so he's just been kept to the end of the season, which is a brave decision considering. Well, I say it's a brave decision. It kind of sounds like them kind of accepting that they're going to be a championship team next season, and they're just like trying to save costs as best they can. But you mentioned Graham Potter, so we'll start off with Chelsea. Again, one of the very few teams to have changed their manager twice in this year, and like I said, the least said about the Chelsea season, the better, really, in a from their point of view, because it has just been a very, very bad campaign for them. They're not the only team to have struggled this year. Obviously, Liverpool are kind of in the same camp, and you might argue, just like so many long seasons in a row have probably caught up to them this year, especially with how truncated everything has been. But that's not the whole story, though. I think that's a fair argument to say, because even with Liverpool struggling, Chelsea's kind of issues have been almost more kind of esoteric, if that's the right word to use, because it's a lot of it stemming down from the ownership. A lot of it stemming down to not really identifying what a Chelsea team should look like or how should play
Yeah,
as. I've had your thoughts on that one, Dave, as well, because like it seems like they kind
it's
of trying to revert to the mean a bit.
it's funny because I think it's more Chelsea just couldn't kill off a game this season. They just couldn't kill off a game. And for the games where they haven't scored, they got beaten.
Hmm.
So for them to lose 12 games in a season is unusual in itself, but it's the nine draws that killed them. You take three of
Hmm.
those results to turn them into wins, and you're not really complaining all that much about Chelsea because they're up in the sixth, seventh place. It's not as bad as people made it out to be. So
Hmm.
I just think with Chelsea, it's purely at the top. The biggest problems are at the top.
Yeah.
I think the players coming in are made to feel like superstars, even though half the fan bases know who they are. They haven't seen them play because they've come in from France or Germany or wherever else. And Graham Potter, I don't know what his thought process was in taking the Chelsea job to begin with. I mean, I understand it's one of these things where, oh, I can't turn down Chelsea, top four club. Well, not anymore. They're in bottom 10. But I don't think Chelsea brought out in any way near the best in Graham Potter. We've seen what he could do
Yeah.
at Brighton. We've seen how good a coach he is in Scandinavia before he came
Hmm.
to England, and he was even tipped for the next England job
Yeah, I think he still
up
would be
until
realistically. Yeah.
he moved to Chelsea. I'm not blaming the coaching staff. I'm not really blaming many of the players. The only thing I blame at Chelsea is the ownership. Since the Abramovich era kind of came to a shuddering halt because of the war in Ukraine, as bad as Abramovich was, there was at least a little bit of stability that's been there for a few years. Just that little bit of, you always top four, top five, never really
Hmm.
dropping out of the top six, to be honest. And since the new owners have taken over, well, there's your results. You know, you,
I'm trying to wonder, is this just like the consequence of having such a kind of like high throughput of managers and players at a club like Chelsea? Like we always slag off Watford for going through managers like their playing cards, to the point where this season they've made the announcement that they're keeping a manager for the end of the season. This is seen as
the fact that you
news.
have to make an announcement to keep a manager says it all.
Yeah, like that's just like that. That is just being aware of your own kind of memeology, I guess. But
Yep.
for Chelsea, like I'm not sure whether it's them just simply kind of like the fear factor of the team is now gone of the club itself of having to go to Stamford Bridge and get a result now. Like I think there's from seeing Chelsea play so much this season, like I think the word identity is coming to mind, which I loathe in football because I think it's a very very big buzzword that means absolutely nothing. Like
Yep.
identity is the word you use because you want to hire your mate for the job because he knows the club. There's a great sketch I think done by the Exploding Heads, I think they're called. And basically they're slacking off, the kind of the proverbial talk sport, like talking heads where they say like, oh well, he knows the club. He was there for years and he'd be fantastic. And this is them basically kind of like, making the case for someone who's probably their fucking cousin or their brother-in-law to get the managerial role. The same way that like the Redknaps always do a puff piece on Frank Lampard just when he's about to get a job.
Yeah.
It's always the same way. And then you see Chelsea kind of doing the same thing because like realistically I think Chelsea's probably one of the most unpalatable jobs in the league at the moment, outside of say some team that's like destined to be relegated. Like
Yeah.
you're going to go down with Southampton, but the problem with
Well,
Chelsea is that you're being given like ludicrous riches and all the
yeah.
players in the world, but no
Now,
structure in between.
the biggest thing for me is they've only beaten one out of the bottom four in 2023, I
Yeah.
think. Um, they've drew against Forest. They have lost against Southampton.
Mm.
Um, West Ham was a draw as well. They lost to Tottenham, just about beat Leeds, hammered by City, beaten by Fulham. But then you come up against Borussia Dortmund and go through. It's a
Yeah.
really weird inconsistency because if you can put up a fight against a team who's second in the Bundesliga, it's not like they're far down the table. They're
Mm.
challenging for the league title against Bayern Munich. Why can't you put up a performance like that against Southampton the game after that? Now I understand it's 3 days later, but you brought in about
Mm.
20 players. You're not short of rotation. You've got enough talented players there that if you rotate, you should be confident enough to say, well, you guys played in Europe. These lads are going to get a go at the weekend to take on bottom of the second bottom Southampton
Yeah.
or bottom Southampton should win that. So for me, it's nothing has made sense to me in regards to Chelsea this season. All I can say to you is they've just nothing's made sense after the seasons they
Yeah.
have had. I can't make head and tail of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat for them as well. Like, I mean, like again, this season in particular has been a weird one because of the kind of sudden shape of it. But I think a lot of teams will be kind of looking, particularly big teams that are going to lose their European status this year, are looking at this kind of trying almost do an autopsy of what went wrong. And I think one argument would be Liverpool for sure, but another would be Chelsea, just like pretty much everything. But as you said yourself, Dave, I think a big part of this kind of like ailing issue has been the leadership and not
Yeah,
actually like kind of running the club in a sensible manner. Like he is basically coming in as a proverbial cowboy
yeah.
and trying to throw money at the situation, thinking that's what you do.
Now,
But like,
He's coming in from an American point of view. So,
mm,
is he coming in not knowing what relegation is? Is he coming in knowing that dropping out of the European places is going to cost you big
I
time?
think yeah, there's certainly that mindset, isn't there? Like, I mean, like I suppose like like there is that sort of supposed kind of cliche that like the American like sports teams, particularly in NFL and so forth, they have this kind of premise of a fallow season where like they know
Yeah,
they're not going to be in contention, but they use that season to rebuild and to assess where to go next and all these things.
yeah.
You know,
It's not even that. It's you could be bottom of the. We've said this on a previous podcast. You
hmm,
could be bottom of your table and still bring in like 2 billion in licensed product sales. You can bring in 2 billion in
hmm,
merchandise or whatever it is. Doesn't
yeah,
matter. You're still bringing in 2 billion quid finishing last in the Premier League. If you finish last, you lose a lot of money. It's not a franchise model.
no,
That's not how it works here. I just think he's been really ignorant in a sense that he's not learned the world. He's not learned the world he's coming into, and
hmm,
that happened for the Chicken Brothers who took over Blackburn. Didn't
Bankies, yeah,
understand what they were doing. Benky Brothers.
yeah,
And a couple of championship clubs who've dropped down to League One and
hmm,
League Two. Wigan,
hmm,
another, they're going to be dropped down again. They're bottom of the championship.
Yeah.
Again, another club that's run by people that really just didn't educate themselves. And I really fear.
It's a common enough story. It really is. And again, the hilarious thing is that it keeps happening.
Mhm,
But I mean, it's also like common. It's also kind of shows you how kind of unscrupulous the whole Premier League structure is,
mhm.
because obviously with such a lucrative kind of thing as the Premier League, it's
Yep.
gonna attract the most eccentric people. And I don't have any like kind of issue with that. I'd rather have an eccentric in charge of the club rather than a state.
No,
But
look,
but by and large,
look the early 2000s and well, say the mid 2000s and the mid 2010s and early 2010s.
mm,
The having Chelsea with Drogba and Lampard and Michael Ballack and all that was brilliant.
yeah,
That Chelsea, I like. I'll put it out there. I don't hate Chelsea Football Club, far from it.
mm,
But I miss having that Chelsea that I've gone through my teenage years watching. The Drogbas, the Ballacks, even Arjen Robben was there at one point early in his
hmm
career. All of these players they brought in, Damien Duff as well, flew for Mourinho. But it was just that Chelsea is now wavered, and that's why I'm really disappointed. I'm missing the Chelsea that's when you come up against United or Tottenham or Arsenal or Liverpool, they're a force. Do you know what I mean? The
yeah.
Stamford Bridge was a horrid place to go to for an away game.
Yeah, and it doesn't even seem like the worst away trip now at this stage. Like that's
Southampton are
nothing to do with
winning. Southampton are winning
yeah,
Stamford Bridge. Like it's disappointing for me because I know what that Chelsea side is capable of.
yeah,
Now it goes to show you they brought in manager after manager now, and to be honest, I think it was a big mistake sacking Thomas Tuchel. Just
yeah.
saying,
I think
I think it
that
was
that will stand as the biggest
massive
failure of the
mistake.
season. Yeah,
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 because I don't think he was doing that wrong. I think he was the best man to sit in that job. He knew what he was doing.
mm,
He had great football head on him. I'm not saying Graham Potter doesn't. I just think Graham Potter to Chelsea was too soon, way too
yeah,
soon. Fly your trade at Brighton, be a long term manager at Brighton, build your reputation a little bit more. Jumping onto the Chelsea gig months later, getting sacked, that's not going to
mm.
do you any good. Now he's going to get picked up. He is going to get another job,
Yeah.
but I think from a from an entire league point of view, this season has been a complete and utter shambles because 13 of the clubs out of the 20 have sacked their managers.
Yeah, like it's well, we mentioned about it ready to wrap with the last episode. Obviously, you weren't on it, Dave, and just like I think because it's such a close fight this season, every team has got the shits up them, and they're afraid of losing their status. I think with the point I was going to make about Chelsea in particular is that I feel like they have been the actual victim of this proverbial new mid table, and these are teams that are like genuinely well run, have a serious recruitment drive on them, have a structure that like even the likes of Chelsea don't have.
Yeah.
Leicester are currently a bad example, but Leicester were kind of the precursor to this, where they had feeder clubs. They had, like OHL in Belgium that would
Mm-hmm.
feed players into the first team. Now they've mismanaged it since, but the principle was there. Then you
Yeah.
have Brentford. I'm using Brentford and Brighton here as the examples because they are actively what they become.
Mm-hmm.
Like Brentford are owned by the same people who own FC Michelin, so obviously they've got a
Mm-hmm.
tie up,
Yeah.
and there's a third club in the connection there as well.
But they're
Then you
about the
got Brighton.
football.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
this is the big difference. Brighton
Mm,
and Brentford are about the football. They're
yeah,
about you know their grassroots style of club. They're about the football, the style of play. How can we
yeah,
win games based on what we have?
yes,
Whereas, even you could even put Newcastle into that bracket. They've not spent a massive amount realistically compared to other clubs,
yeah,
but they're still in that case of right. We've not spent a massive amount of money. However,
mm,
it's their style of play. That's Eddie Howe's style of football that he had at
yeah,
Bournemouth is now working out really well for Newcastle. Now
mm,
they will become a club that's going to spend hundreds of millions
yeah.
next
That
season,
that
the
that
season
is
after,
that
season
is
after.
that is inevitable, isn't it? Yeah,
Inevitable. But clubs like you could put Manchester United in this bracket as well because they're one of the
mm,
most valuable clubs in the world. It's all about shareholdings. It's all about increasing the share price. The
mm.
shirt sales have to go out to win. They have to go out. They have to go out the door. They're concentrating so much on the commercial side and the revenue side that the football's just gotten lost in the equation for the
I
most
think
part.
that's
Now
where
Ten
Chelsea's
Hag's done well
getting
though.
lost. Yeah, I think that's where Chelsea is stuck because Chelsea are trying to kind of almost have it both ways, where they want to try and create a team that's gonna like grow up together for a long, long time, and they've seen this work with Liverpool. They've seen that work with Arsenal at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone gets in the same age profile. They all grow up together basically, and they
Yeah.
become a better team that way. But the trouble with that is and Liverpool are learning this, particularly this season, is that you can't just recruit in a vacuum like that and just hope that they're all going to come together. It just doesn't happen like
No,
that. It's a lot more in depth like
you,
that. Again,
yeah, you hope
using
Harvey
Brentford,
Elliott is going to
yeah,
become a superstar, but he's not a superstar. He's not going to become a superstar. Harry Wilson was the same. Liverpool fans have touting him. Oh, Harry Wilson, he's going to be. They're not going to be superstars. Ryan Kent went to Rangers and became, a star for them.
yeah,
he said, "Look, this is my level, Scottish top of the Scottish Premiership. I'm going to stay here."
hmm,
These guys aren't going to become superstars now. Some of the very rare ones, like Trent, that has come through the system over the
hmm,
years. You've had players who have come through the system, but they're always one, two. You're never going to get a fleet of them. Curtis Jones, is he going to be a first teamer regular? Is he going to be a superstar for Liverpool? I don't think so. These are
hmm.
bit part players who will play their part in a great season, but they'll never
Yeah, squad
be.
players. Yeah,
Yeah, they're squad players. They'll never be that top name.
hmm.
And I think Liverpool's hitting that. They've peaked and they're plateau. They're just plateauing now. They're just
Yeah, and
it's
that was
getting
that was going to happen, I think.
yeah
But like I said, I think both clubs are kind of fallen into a trap of thinking that they were comfortable with the recruitment they had.
yeah
Liverpool were kind of sitting in their laurels, hoping to kind of land a proverbial big one, whereas Chelsea were going, let's flex and bring in as many as we can. And as you said, it will satisfy the commercial side because you're bringing in these players that people kind of heard of, but players that are hoping to become high profile stars in the future.
yeah
But you're like I said, you're spending how much money on
yeah
Mudrick, how much money you're spending on Fofana, Badashile. You're doing all these things, and you're hoping you get the return.
yeah.
And
You're
yeah, I know.
supposed
Like if you
you
worked out the details, they're only paying like 15 million per player per season, but that's not
mm-hmm.
kind of not the point. If Chelsea were
No,
to have
no.
two more seasons like this, and then FFP come knock and go and bitch, where's our money? That's the
Yeah.
trouble they have.
And the big thing about Chelsea as well is, and a lot of the teams that seem to be at the bottom is Leicester City in particular have gotten lost in this. Is the old school way of doing it is, and Man United have done it with Bruno Fernandes, and City have done it
Mm,
with Erling Haaland, and Arsenal have done it with Granit Xhaka and the like. Is you build a team around a core player.
yeah.
That's how I've always known football. The team is built around a core player if you can afford to do that. Roy Keane was like that at Man United. He was like that at
Mm,
Ireland. Team was built around Roy Keane for Ireland. Do you know what I mean? And Chelsea, who have you built? You can't build a player any team around the player because you have too many players. Who are you going to build a team
yeah.
around?
Good point. Yeah. Yeah. Very good
Lampard's not
point.
there anymore. He's well gone. He's managing now, for God's sake.
Mm,
Scholes, that midfield, Scholes, when you had him playing, you could build a team around Scholes, and that's what Ferguson
yeah.
did for the most part. He had like the pick of the bunch, but when Scholes was playing, every player knew they had an outlet. If they wanted to
Mm,
pass, Scholes would hit a 50 pence piece 200 yards away. Do you know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
you had that
Absolutely.
outlet. You had
Well,
it with
and that's the thing. That's the spine of the team, and sometimes that's just down to the crew, but that's just down to who you have, what personnel do you have, and as you
yep,
said, if you have a squad of 40 players, people are going to get lost in the shuffle.
yep.
So let's switch from Chelsea then for a spell,
Mm-hmm.
and we go to another basket case in London in Spurs. So this one was kind of the more entertaining of the sackings we've had, where it was quite literally Antonio Conte going, "Please sack me, I hate all of you." And
Yeah,
yeah, I know there's kind of two reasons for it as well in regards to like he lost a close friend in Gianluca Vialli and he's almost
yeah.
certainly homesick and even the issues he had perhaps health issues kind of maybe gave him a bit of a kind of a reflective aspect that he wants to kind of go
Mm-hmm.
back to home in Italy. And also that Antonio Conte is probably going to be the next Juventus manager when Allegri gets sacked at the end of the season. But sentimental reasons, obviously. But for Conte at Spurs, like this was an experiment that was always going to fail. Like even we said it on this
Absolutely,
podcast last year. We knew it
absolutely.
was going to fail. We were really just kind of like trying to time for the popcorn to pop before it all kicks off. And again, I think I was describing Spurs during the week as a kind of it is a corpse of a
Yeah,
team, but what they do is they'll do something every now and then that kind of like it's almost like a defibrillation. It just like
yeah,
zaps the team for a couple of seconds. There's a bit of signs of life, and then they're dead again. And I,
yeah.
I don't know how many times this Spurs team can be revived before being broken apart.
The
You
the
know,
biggest the biggest problem for Spurs was they don't have the players to fit Conte's style of play. They haven't had all season.
mm-hmm,
Conte turns around and plays 3-4-2-1. Fine. I love that formation personally. I think it's a breath of fresh air.
Mm,
But you're not. You have Son Heung-min playing more central as an attacking midfielder behind Harry Kane. Kulishevsky's coming in from the right. No,
mm.
we know Son as a left-sided winger.
Yeah.
He has
He's
always
an
been a
out and out
left-sided
left winger.
winger.
Yeah.
He has always cut in from the left. He's always fed Harry Kane. That's the Spurs that was winning before Conte took over. That was the
Mm.
Spurs that was actually doing well, you know, the last few seasons. He's not got the star power either. That he's lost players that have previously been doing really well at Spurs. But when you have to have Eric Dyer in the right smack bang in the centre of your defence, Clement Longley on the left of you, Christian Romero
Yeah.
on the right. And let's face it, Hugo Lloris is not the same keeper he was. If your defense is that bloody shaky, there's no way you're going to get results this season. That defense
Mm.
is terrible from a sports point of view. Pedro Porro is okay. Ivan Perisic, come on, you brought him in at the back end of his career. He's not the wing back he used to be. In fairness, he was actually for Inter Milan. He was a left-sided midfielder as well,
He
similar to
was
where
he was their
Son
number
was.
10 actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he could play more central if you wanted to.
Mm.
Højbjerg, I kind of feel a little bad for because you know he has that quality in him.
Yeah.
Kulishevsky was a good idea. He still has a lot to do. I don't think he's quite there yet. And Harry Kane is just, he'll score goals, but he had his chance to leave that Spurs squad. He didn't take it.
Yeah.
You know,
And I
he's
think
got to sit there.
that's gonna be the
Yeah.
summary of him, really, isn't it? It's
Yep.
almost like a nearby or a nearly kind of player, and it is unfair on a player like that because like let's face it, lesser players have won trophies. For folks like Jimmy Traore is a Champions League winner. Let's
Yep.
not like dig that particular heel in, but it's always it kind of with Spurs. I feel like obviously we knew this was always going to happen. This experiment was always going to fail, um, and it was always going to be dramatic when eventually it falls out.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating myself that for someone like Spurs, for a team like Spurs who are bending over backwards to satisfy Conte's needs and wants, and like let's be fair here, Spurs have spent money. Like it's not as if he was working with austerity here. They have spent money to try and fund this passion project of theirs, and in the end, what they've got is the same team with perhaps one or two extra little stickers on it. It's like having a car from the 1990s and all you've done is like give it new alloys. It's still the same car and it's still churning out fucking monoxides like no tomorrow. Any cosmetic changes like that are not going to make a big difference. Kulusevski signing him was great. Porro signing him was great, but the core is still a bit stagnant. That spine that Pochettino set up years ago is gone. That steel is gone. So what's the next solution then? Bring him back? It doesn't make any sense. Like in
Yeah.
the end, like I think in the end, I feel like it was never going to be enough for Conte anyway, because like we know how demanding he is, but we also know how good he is. So if you're going to, want to win the championship, you're going to have to give Conte whatever he needs and wants,
Yeah.
and basically try what he doesn't want as well. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, Spurs are very like, particularly Danny Levy is insistent on using what he has there to the hilt. Unless he gets a good price for them, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest problem is how he's setting up the team. Because realistically, if you rejig that side
Mm,
and you have, I understand you go Harry Kane, and you have to play Harry Kane or whatever it is he has in his contract. But
yeah.
if you put Richarlison up front, you have Son on the left, Perisic through the middle, and Kulishevsky
Hmm.
on the right. They have 4-2-3-1. That Spurs team is scary.
Yeah.
In the right configuration, that Spurs team is good enough to be in the top four. Because you have
Mm,
to only have to look at their bench. Davinson Sanchez has kind of redeemed himself a little bit, under Conte. He's not been too bad, but he's on the bench.
mm,
Richarlison's on the bench. The problem with their bench is it's not got an awful lot of depth at all.
hmm.
Now, I understand Emerson's out, Ben Davies is out, Sessegnon's out, Basuna's out, Ben Tanker's out. I get it. They have a lot of injuries at the minute. But the bench, it has players like Tanganga, George Abbott, Alfie Devine, Brandon Austin. If you're that short on the bench and you're not playing the right formation that's going to fit this team, it's
Mm,
just never going to work out. Like Conte's
yeah.
style of football does great, But if he can't bring in the players he needs to fit this style of football, it's not going to work. That was never
No.
going to work for him. Do from the start.
Yeah, I think it was doomed from the start, and I think the sheer fact that they still kind of stand well, not anymore now because they've started the tailspin as was kind of predicted. Really, now that they're no longer really in for a Champions League space here, like it's likely going to be United and Newcastle, but like it's at least I think it's just desserts as well. But even if they finish fifth, I think that feels like an overachievement for a
Yeah,
team that have, like, from when I watched them, played some of the worst football of the season, and
yeah.
particularly at the start of the campaign, they were atrocious.
They were horrible to watch. They were
Yeah,
horrible to watch.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I've watched a few sports games this season. I try and watch as many teams as I can across the span of the season. And
Mm,
yeah, Spurs of the last 5 or 6 years, you could say, have bored the arse off everyone.
yeah,
There's not really been anything special on yeah, obviously you have to count their Champions League exploits,
gross, yeah.
especially the game against Ajax. Do you know what I mean? They have been great in Europe, but when it comes to domestic, they've not really lit the place up.
No,
Arsenal have come on leaps and bounds, but we'll talk about that at another stage.
they
But
will.
Spurs, no, Spurs for me, they just don't have the players to fit that style. If you have the right players to fit that style of football, Conte is laughing. Conte doesn't
Yeah,
want to be there anymore. The players, it's a makeshift Spurs squad due to injuries. The bench isn't as deep as he needs it to be. And it's just, yeah, nothing is right about that Spurs setup that I'm looking at the minute. Like, there's
no.
nothing right that apart from, yes, Harry Kane is a striker.
And I
That's
think
it.
what's compounding the problem as well is that, like, it was very clearly evident that the players fell out with Conte, or at least there
Yeah.
was some level of breakdown in communication there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's worse is now that they've kept Cristiano Stellini in charge for the rest of the
Yeah.
season, because he is essentially a Conte light. He's still playing tactically the same system
Yeah.
with the same players and essentially expecting the same results. Now, if I'm not mistaken,
How much of that is coming from the top? How much can you
yeah,
say of that is coming from the top? Because if I was, I mean, Daniel Levy must be out of his mind to think that, oh, let's play the same stuff. It's not gotten you anywhere.
no.
Like it's just not gotten. It's just not.
But that's also them. That's surely just him treading water until the end of the season, where he actually
Yeah.
decides who he wants to pick. So like it's essentially accepting that the season as he has it is over, and wherever they end up landing at the end of the campaign is wherever it is. Like, it's not going to be any lower than probably seventh or eighth,
Yeah.
but that is the difference between Europa League and Conference League, kind of way.
Yep.
And let's be fair here, if they still kind of struggled along their way, they could have still made the Champions League, regardless of what was
Correct.
going on. But it is what it is. I mean, like, is it looking like it's going to be Pochettino again? Because I would think like, I don't think what else he can achieve that he hasn't
No, not
already.
with Daniel Levy in charge. Not
Yeah.
with Daniel Levy in charge. Like, I understand Spurs are fifth. Now, people will probably come on and say, look, Spurs are fifth. What do you mean they've had a
Mm.
terrible season? Spurs won Champions League.
Yeah.
They're not going to get Champions League by the looks of it. If you look at
Mm.
Spurs running, so who does Spurs have the last set for the season?
I know they had to face us at some stage
Still
anyway.
have to face Liverpool.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Newcastle, Man United, Liverpool, Palace, Villa, Brentford, and Leeds. Brentford in form. Villa massively in form. Palace back in form under Hodgson. Liverpool, they may scrape that one. I don't know. Man United, not a chance in hell. Newcastle
Yeah.
at home, no way. So you look at their run in, you think, oh, they're fifth for now.
Yeah.
But
And that's the thing. I think their
no.
season has been fifth for now, because, like,
Exactly.
it's like, okay, they're holding a place there for the actual team that'll finish fifth, kind of way.
Correct.
And
Correct.
that's what always felt for them. And like I said, like, I think, like, the summer's gonna be interesting for them in particular, because, like, again, the manager's gonna decide where they go. You know what Spurs are going to do, though. They're gonna try and court the likes of a Nagelsmann or
Yeah.
the likes of a Tuchel. I can't see Tuchel taking the Spurs job. Obviously not, because he went to Bayern.
Nope.
And I can't see Nagelsmann taking it either, because I think Chelsea probably have dibs on him, and they'll drive that project into the ground, unfortunately, because, as I said, the issue is not the managers or the players, it's Todd fucking Bowley. So, like, whichever way Spurs cut it, they're getting basically the second choice of the Chelsea job. And That's
Yeah.
even saying that after Chelsea could finish
Yeah.
as low as what 13th potentially, and they're still taking whatever basically the second on the Chelsea panel, and
Mhm.
that's saying a lot more about Spurs considering they could have European football, kind of way.
Yep.
But speaking of old favorites coming back to old clubs, this seems like a good transition to talk about Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Um, because they ended up in a bit of a tailspin this season, scoring no goals,
Yep.
not winning at home. A lot of troubling signs of Palace, even though they've been okay this season, and that's the thing. They were kind of unexceptional for a while. And then suddenly, like a 5% drop in the performance, and suddenly they're losing games, and crucially
Yep.
losing games to their rivals as well. Um, so in this case, they had to let go of Patrick Vieira. Um, now I don't watch Palace enough to know whether that was an issue with the manager or not, or it was purely we needed a change, breath of fresh air, all this sort of stuff. And nothing says breath of fresh air like Roy Hodgson, the
Yeah.
octogenarian Roy Hodgson,
Yeah.
who I think now this is his third time managing Palace, if I'm not mistaken, possibly second. I
Yeah.
can't recall. Um,
Possibly
but
second. Yeah.
But as we said with Frank Lampard taking over Chelsea, Dave, he knows the club, and sure, isn't that half the
Yeah.
battle?
Look, Palace have, you know, okay, they lost against Arsenal, lost against Brighton, lost against City, lost against Villa, drawn against Liverpool, drawn against Brentford, drawn against Brighton again, lost against United. Liverpool was a draw, United was a draw, Chelsea beat Palace. Roy Hodgson comes in, they beat Leicester 2-1. They hammer Leeds 5-1.
Hmm.
They beat Southampton 2-0. I mean, I don't know if it's a case of the players looked at Roy Hodgson and said, "Thank God you're back.
Yeah.
Thank God you're back." Well, you don't know what you have until it's gone. Do you know that type of way? I think
Hmm.
that was the kind of mentality of the club. Roy, maybe it was a mistake to get rid of Roy. Okay, he wasn't having the best times, but maybe we should have given him a little bit longer. Brought in
Hmm.
Patrick Vieira, good start, and then just dropped off.
Yeah.
Completely and utterly dropped off into the relegation battle. Roy Hodgson comes back. I think he's proven a point.
Hmm.
I think he's proven a massive point. He wasn't, yeah, okay. His results weren't going the right way, but he's come back and they've scored what? 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 goals in 3 games,
Hmm.
which is more than the previous. I can't, you have to scroll down.
Yeah, I think it was more. I think they were
Do you
goalless
know
for
what
about
I
10 games,
mean?
as far as I know.
Do you know?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So I mean, in 3 games, he scored as many goals as he has in, or as they have in the last 10 or 12 games. So
yeah,
he's got them scoring again. He's got them winning again. I think it's just a case of you don't know what you're missing till it's gone.
yeah.
And Roy's
But
come back and done phenomenal with them. He really has.
I think it's so baffling because like I'm nearly sure I know a couple of seasons ago they would have had Sam Allardyce on in the job.
I had him on
And
speed dial. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and they were a resurgent team. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm nearly sure they've had player managers like I think it was Warnock they let go of initially,
Mm.
and they let go of him to get De Boer in charge, and that was an unmitigated disaster. So Palace have had
That
this
was
kind of like
horrific.
yeah, it was really really bad because they've tried like constantly to be a more metropolitan team. They try to modernize Crystal Palace as best they can, and again, there's no harm in doing that because you look at the Moneyball setup of some teams, and you can imagine Crystal Palace are going to look at like Zaha, Eze, and Elise and go, "I want in on that. Let's start fucking cashing in," you know. And they had one success in Wan-Bissaka by selling him off for 50 million, and they're thinking, "Let's keep doing it. Let's keep churning out the players." Because
Yep.
again, Crystal Palace are in that magic catchment area of Croydon and the London
Yeah.
area where they have
South
the
London.
pick of the youth players. Yeah, South London, exactly.
Yep. Yep.
So they're in that proverbial like that area that they can coach the young players and give them a chance. So you can see the logic of bringing someone in like Vieira, who is that proverbial draw. Like you can imagine young players will want to learn from Patrick Vieira. Whereas Roy Hodgson, you say, a lot of people like from our generation will not really appreciate Roy Hodgson because we only know him as like the guy who fucked up the Liverpool job, and that is such a detriment to his actual career because he's done so much better things outside of that. Like we often forget because again it was a bit before our time. He's won two Premier League championships.
Mm-hmm.
He won with Blackburn. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
mentions the fact that he's
Yep.
won the Premier League. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so these are things that like that feel like ancient history to us. Um, but
Look,
obviously he's found some.
Blackburn. You mentioned there, Blackburn won the Premier League title, 1995. Now,
Yeah.
what bugs me is the only two people that people remember from that are Alan Shearer and Chris Sutton. That does
Mm,
mean nothing.
yeah.
The manager got them that title.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, was it not Kenny Dalglish that won it with Blackburn?
I think Dalglish won the first one. I'm very sure Hodgson was in charge for at least one of the title reigns.
Okay.
I'm nearly sure. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure he was in charge for Blackburn for a spell anyway. Um,
Yeah, he was 97, 98. We had a season in
mm.
charge of Blackburn.
Okay, right. So he didn't actually win the Premier League. Do you know what? I shut my mouth. I was wrong. But
Yeah.
even then, he's had a career outside of that like and again, this is one thing is true. He has managed Inter Milan, so he has had big top jobs before.
He has
I,
brought Fulham to the final of the
mm,
Europa League, where if it
exactly.
wasn't for Sergio Aguero and Diego Forlan, they probably would have won a European trophy. They beat
Yeah,
Juventus.
exactly. Yeah, and
He
this
should be
and
remembered
that's
for
the thing.
that.
He is able to get performances out of players like that, and obviously,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes when you have a situation like Palace where clearly Vieira would potentially have what I would call a touch of the Thierry Henry's, where
Mm-hmm.
he is so demanding as a coach because he expects his players to do what he did. And sometimes with Patrick Vieira was like a one in a lifetime midfielder. Like it's very hard to get that marauding type of midfielder that has the physical attributes and the technical ability to do what he need to do whatever he
Yep.
wants to do in that midfield. Not everybody can do what Patrick Vieira did. And also, if you are not able to communicate that point, then you're
No.
never going to work out as a manager. Um, as Vieira's kind of learning here because I think this is the third time now he's been sacked from his second
Yeah,
season.
so I think was he with Nice?
New York City FC, then Nice, and then
Yeah,
Palace. Yeah.
no Palace. Yeah.
So
He's just turning into one of these former player managers. He's turning into like the Steven Gerrards, the Frank Lampards,
yeah,
these guys who big names as players doesn't always mean you're going to transition into a fantastic manager.
yeah,
Funnily enough, it's the mediocre to bag average players who normally turn out to be great managers.
mm.
Jurgen Klopp's, the Jose Mourinho's,
The Rafa Benitez, who famously
Rafa
didn't play a
Benitez.
game.
So,
Yeah.
these guys, now Pep Guardiola's never been in a club where he wasn't bankrolled to the top. So I'm not even going to include him in the
No,
same breath.
that doesn't qualify. But like
Exactly.
Eddie Howe, Sean Dyche, these players
Graham
they were
Souness,
Graham Souness,
the
yeah.
Kenny Dalglish, these guys have won league titles as players, but in
Mm,
a different era. But now it's more, Graham Potter, for example, that he went the Roy Hodgson route of I'm going to manage Scandinavia. I was
yeah.
Ostersunds. I think he
It was, yeah, got to the Europa
rose
League
into the
against Arsenal.
rose into the ranks.
Mm.
So he went the Roy Hodgson route. Roy Hodgson's a Malmo
Yeah, that's
god,
right. And the Swedish national team as well, I think.
Swedish Halmstad's BK was at Oribo Malmo in the 80s.
Mm,
He went to Switzerland. He won the Super League over there.
yeah.
He's had quite a few honors.
Mm,
Um, Halmstad's won their league title first year he was there.
yeah.
So first season league title.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, they've gone the route that traditional managers take. Mourinho was under Bobby Robson. Um,
yeah.
he learned from him. Came up as assistant manager. There was a lot of managers who didn't quite make the grade, but Steve Clark was under Mourinho. He's now managing Scotland national team who beat Spain, who are
Yeah.
now on course to qualify for the next European Championship. Or these guys, the Scotland team have been
They've been fantastic. They're
flying with
great.
Steve
They're a
Clark.
great team to watch as well. They play
Exactly.
proper football. Yeah.
So it's the players who undertake the assistant manager
Hmm.
role and learn from somebody higher up that tend to be more successful, like Mourinho under Bobby Robson,
Like Mikel
um,
Arteta under Pep.
Mikel Arteta under Pep, who went on to
Hmm.
Arsenal. They gave him time.
Yeah,
He's got the youngsters developed enough now that he's challenging for the Premier League.
yeah.
And it's if you learn from that, if you can take the best of what you learn from above you, apply
Mm.
your own little tweaks here and there, that's always been successful.
Yeah.
It's always been a success, for majority of managers who've been under. Now, I think Paul Clement has had a bit of a drop off. He was a manager at Chelsea, assistant
He
manager at
was, yeah, he
Chelsea
was
as
a
well.
coach there, and I think
Um,
the best gig he got was Swansea.
yeah,
Well,
he
that's
went
not
to
true. He was at Munich for a long time as well, but
yeah. But again, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think at the end of the day, Roy Hodgson just had the pedigree
mm.
to. He had the balls to come back to Palace for a start, but I think it was because when he left or Palace got rid of Hodgson, he probably turned around and said, "Do what you need to do. I'll be back. Give me 9 or 10 months, I guarantee you begging me to come back."
Well, it's kind of proven to be true because Palace basically sleepwalked into a relegation fight, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And the incredible thing is about this season in particular, you could say it about half the league. You know,
Mm-hmm.
at any point, at any given time, perhaps half of that league table, with probably exception to Chelsea, really, have found themselves in that bottom three.
Yeah.
Um, Especially, well, not like early stages are different, but like in the midst of the season, they've been in the bottom three at some stage, and that drop off between the Premier League and the Championship, I think, is getting so much wider on a financial basis because these clubs, especially the likes if you look at a Leicester or West Ham or an Everton,
Yeah.
have become so bloated in terms of wages and transfer fees that they physically cannot cope with
Mm-hmm.
a season in the Championship. It would just kill them. Um, it would happen. They'd have a situation like Sunderland where it would result in a relegation to League
Mm-hmm.
One. You know, where you could say Southampton, they run their books a little bit more sensible. They could deal with a relegation. They could cope with something like that. Bournemouth, Forest potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But these legacy teams in the Premier League can't cope with a season out of it. There's a dependence there for it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a weird way, I think the guinea pig of that is going to be Leicester. The last of our sackings to talk about because they let go Brendan Rodgers. And I was very surprised by this sacking in particular because um I wouldn't say
Brendan
I have a soft
Rodgers.
spot for him. Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a soft spot for him in particular, but I don't think he
Uh,
wasn't necessarily at fault.
no,
For
I think it was a genuine.
it was the last throw of the dice for me for Leicester. They
Yeah,
had
it
to do
was
something.
basically no. Leicester knew they were done. Right,
Yeah.
Rodgers had done all he could do. He gave them a trophy, won the FA Cup with Leicester.
Mm,
Leicester had won the league in recent years. Leicester have had their absolute hit their peak.
yeah.
Now they knew this season, especially at this point in time. Look, we've run out of steam. We're gone. Cutting Rodgers was a cost cutting measure as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Rodgers, here's your payout. Thank you for your service, but we need to cut the budget. We're going to have to let you go. I genuinely think it was a cost cut measure from Leicester's point of view because they're already preparing for life in the championship. And now
Yeah.
they'll make money from their top players. Don't get me wrong. Jamie Vardy will probably stay. He's at that age now where he's probably thinking, "Oh,
He'll
championship
probably
great. I
coach
can
the
still
team at
bang
this
goals
stage.
in." But he'll probably go, "I'm moving down a division. I can still bang me goals in."
Yeah.
He's probably actually thinking, "I'm going to get relegated, but I'm going to stay because in the championship, I may be able to have another 25 goal season."
Yeah.
Who knows? But players like Tielemans and stuff like that will make them enough money that they can maybe still push to get back up next season. They'll
Mm,
bring in the money from these players, and if they spend smartly, they'll have enough to try and push to get back up to the Premier League next season.
yeah.
But they knew they were done. They knew they were done. I mean, Steve Cooper's still in the job at Forest, but eh,
I think Forest will probably might like again. I think the Forest owner was trying to like fight back against that kind of presumption that he was going to be another one of
mm,
these trigger happy owners that wanted to get rid of the manager for in light of someone else. Again,
yeah,
bear in mind this is the same guy who took a very very poor Nottingham Forest side that even Chris Hughton couldn't do anything with and managed to get them to the Premier League. So we look, everyone knows how good this guy is. Now the problem is that they've given him a rake load of players and making his job a lot harder because how
Yeah.
do you fit all these people in from different walks of life, different languages, different cultures, and then in January you're throwing in players he doesn't actually need. Did Forest really need Keylor Navas when you had Dean Henderson? Did
21 players.
like it's ludicrous, So I think the
It's
signings
nuts.
have upset the balance there a little bit. But
Keylor Navas was just stupid. Like if I'm Dean Henderson, like I said this, at the start of the season when we did this podcast. I said Keylor Navas came in. I looked around and said, if I was Dean Henderson, I'd be out that door. The gig. This is
oh, yeah,
stupid. This is balls. That's what I
yeah.
would have said. Like, because I think that was a massive, massive, just a massive insult to Dean
Mm.
Henderson.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
know. I agree with you. I think like again, it's what happens when you have. It's almost like it felt like an impulse buy. It's like, hey, we have a chance to get
Yeah.
Navas in the Premier
Yeah.
League. Let's take that off his bucket list. It's just like, well, maybe worry about your own team first. Like
Don't
I
worry
get
about
the
shirt sales. Don't worry about big names coming in.
yeah, pretty much. Like I think
You know.
that's maybe what it was. And I mean, I suppose it's very important to get your brand right if you're not in Forest. But anyway, that's a separate issue. But in a weird way, like it shows you the two extremes of the Premier League, where you have Forest who have signed so many players that their original team is long gone at this stage, that got them there in the first place, and then you have Leicester who have like constantly said they can't afford a season where they can buy players because they're on the cusp of FFP. They are trying to renovate their stadium and they're trying
Yeah.
to renovate the training facilities. So the money is just outright not there. Um, and it's just come at a season where like this new breed of midfield teams who've got their shit together and have kind of made a mockery of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Fulham.
and well, I wouldn't even, Fulham, yes. I think Fulham are very dependent on Mitrovic, though. I think
True.
and
True.
Palinia. If one of those two players are missing from the team, there's nothing else there, and that's I think they probably admit that themselves. Um, but I'm mindful of the likes of Brentford and Brighton, but also Aston Villa. Like I think when everything kind of clicks and they have the right manager, the right coaches, and the
Yeah.
right club all aligned,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually see the potential of a Premier League mid-table team. And Leicester
Yeah.
had that. They had that at the
Mm-hmm.
time, but it's fleeting. You got your FA
Oh
Cup
God,
win,
yeah.
that was it. And if you
That's
don't
it.
evolve, if you don't change your team enough, you get left with this. And you
Mm-hmm.
look at this Leicester team with names like Madison, Vardy, Ndidi, and you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, this is not the same team that like were finishing seventh, kind of way. Like this is the toast of the mid table.
Mm-hmm.
James Madison looks tormented, like he looks traumatized by how bad it is, and it is
Yeah.
a purely a
But they'll
confidence take.
they'll they'll
Again,
make them they'll make their money off him. They'll make their money off him.
they'll want to, yeah, they'll need to.
They'll cash in on him and Tielemans will bring in about 100 million anyway. And that's not including the little payoff that they get. I
Yeah.
think it's what I think
I
it's the
think
last
Tielemans has gone on
payoff.
a free. Actually, I think he's out of
Oh
contract.
dear.
So they couldn't tie again. They couldn't tie him down because he wanted to move anyway, and he wasn't going to sign a new contract. So they're automatically losing on him. If there's relegation clauses in those contracts, then that could be a free for all as
Yeah.
well. Um, I think the
He's
writing was on the wall when Schmeichel left for Nice, because the
oh
Nice
yeah.
yeah, look, listen, it's a mid-table French team, French league, whatever it is, but it's strange for him to want to leave. Is the thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
think maybe there was right on the wall, maybe there were signs there. I don't know. You're not inside the club. We don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but it was certainly very very suspicious in that sense, and perhaps was a harbinger um,
Yeah.
of
Absolutely.
of a potential relegation battle, and that's kind of what Leicester are looking at right now. Like statistically, they're more likely to go down than the likes of Everton and Leeds at the minute. So, it's not looking good for them. But yeah, that's the four sackings. So let's talk about the funeral. So Dave, Arsenal's title challenge is done. We're finished because they drew two games, 2-2. As we all know, Man City are not allowed to lose any games, or else Pep
Mhm.
Guardiola shows them the documentary about I don't know anything really. I think he strikes me as a kind of a documentary guy anyway. You know, maybe like Civilization by Ken Branagh or something like that. Over and over again. But either way, like it's in a run in. We know how good City are. A lot of this is down to how good Arsenal are going to be,
Yeah.
and so far, like what we've seen is there's certainly people interpreting the last two games as per recording, as 4 points dropped as opposed to 2 points gained. Would that be your assessment as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the weekend was the biggest drop. Um, that was a chance to break away and have 6 points clear. And
Mm,
even if City had won their game in hand, they would have still been 3 points up. City would have still
yeah.
have to have gone and done it, and they've got the goal difference. They would have been still chasing that. City
Mm,
win their game in hand, they're 1 point behind Arsenal. And if they build up that momentum and not lose any of their remaining games, Arsenal still have European football. I know City do as well.
mm-hmm.
But who's the more experienced of the two at dealing with that? You're going to go Man City.
Yeah.
Now, I want Arsenal to win the league. I'd like to see Arsenal lift another trophy. They've not done it for so long. Since Wenger, this is the first time they've had to win a title. First chance they've had
Yeah.
to win a title. I'd like to see them do it, but I think they've almost thrown it away in the last few results. Those two draws are going to kill them.
Mm,
Had they have been wins, how far would they have been ahead? 9 points ahead.
yeah.
9 points ahead with 7 games to go. That's a you might as well that even if they lose 3 games, City are only catching up on goal difference. That's a really good place to be in. But at the moment, those two draws they've killed themselves with with the title run in. I think City just have too much experience now. I'd like to see them drop points, but it's really hard to see them drop points in the remaining games this season.
Yeah, like
It's really hard.
I see a distinct comparison between us, or between Arsenal this season and the Brendan Rodgers years of Liverpool, where yeah, they captured that lightning in the bottle, and there
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
makings of a title challenging team there. Well, not at the time, obviously, but you could see in principle, you could
yeah,
see Suarez and Sturridge like linking up. You had the emergence of Sterling coming in. You had somehow Steven Gerrard having this kind of renaissance as this sort of midfield anchor, splitting centre backs
yeah,
and letting people go wide and all this, and a lot of tactical things that were happening for the first time before they were cool, essentially. But what you had in the end was this juggernaut in Man City that just had done this before. This was their
yeah,
thing. They had to win the league title. It was
yeah,
just it was a prerequisite on
yeah,
this constant fucking vanity project. But I think it's even more when I compare the two seasons, like you could almost certainly say that Liverpool threw away that title, but realistically speaking, I don't think they were ever going to win that title that season. You
yeah,
know, because eventually a result like Istanbul, as it's been coined, was going to happen. It had to happen to that
yeah,
team, because no one outside of Gerrard and in fairness, I don't think Gerrard had it himself, the maturity and the actual composure to keep things settled and to win.
yeah,
This Liverpool team were hitting afterburners on people over and over again, to the extent where eventually it was not going to. Some
mhm,
complacency was going to kick in, and they couldn't just outscore their way through a championship a
yeah,
game. You know, this was the season where they famously had the 6-3 against a relegated Cardiff team. So if you're conceding three at home to Cardiff,
yep,
that's a sign
exactly.
of maybe you've got like bigger issues there you're papering over the cracks with. So compare that to and again the Man City team that ended up beating us were no great shakes. They were a standard Man City team. It was Aguero, Silva, Yaya Toure, De Bruyne. Like these were the greatest hits of Man City in fairness.
Yep.
But I then I try and compare this season then to what we had. Um, and I'm thinking to myself, the actual Herculean effort that Arsenal are doing with the squad that they have is incredible. Like I
Yep.
do have to say, like Arsenal have been by far the best team to watch in the league.
Yep.
And by far the most interesting team in the league. And I'll turn to Man City in a moment.
Yep.
Because quite frankly, they're crushing my dreams every time they fucking play a game.
Look, it all comes down to the 26th of April. That's D-Day for both
Yeah,
teams. The biggest game of this season is the 26th of April.
yeah, I totally agree.
The absolute biggest game of the season. If Arsenal can beat Man City at Man
At the
City's
end,
home,
yeah,
at the Etihad, if they can manage to get a win there, I'll back them to the hill till the end of the season. Say, look, they've beaten Man City, they've increased that gap, back to 4 points. They're in with a shout now because Man City then have to go to Fulham, go to Craven Cottage, a Fulham team that's in form.
Mm.
And that's not going to be easy, but you'd still tip them to win it, wouldn't you? We've got West Ham, Leeds, Everton, Chelsea, and Brentford, all of which are bottom of the table, bottom
Yeah.
half of the table clubs. Well, Brentford are top half, but sometimes it can be a bit up and down. But Man United are still playing three competitions, or Manchester City are still playing three competitions. And here's the problem: Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, they got second leg tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
or Wednesday. Sorry, got the second leg of that. They have a semi final against Sheffield United,
Yeah.
which is next this weekend actually. This weekend coming.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got Bayern on Wednesday, Sheffield at the weekend, and then Arsenal
Mm.
4 days later.
Yeah.
So Arsenal have to deal with that fixture congestion in a good way. They have to say to themselves, look, City have 3 games in 10 days. They have to rotate their squad. They have to make changes. They could falter. Now, if they
Mm.
lose in the Champions League, it happens. If they lose I doubt they'll lose to Sheffield United in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. However,
Mm.
if they do falter there, funnily enough, that's bad for Arsenal.
Yeah.
They want them to go in with momentum and lose against Arsenal at home.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one to look at. The 26th of April because of the games that come before it. Arsenal, on the other hand, just have the league.
Yeah. Like
They're out of
their,
Europe. They're
their
out of
entire
Europe.
season hinges on that now. Yeah.
They're out of Europe. They've no more Europe. They're out of all the other
Mm.
competitions. City are still in 3. Arsenal just have the league.
Yeah.
Now, it's not an easy run in. The good thing is, though, the 21st of April, they've got Southampton.
Mm.
Hammer Southampton. Get at
Yeah.
least 6 goals against Southampton going into that City game. Doesn't fucking matter. Hammer Southampton. That should be
Mm.
Arteta's message. I want you to put at least 6 past these. They're bottom of the table. Build your momentum going into the City game. We've got 1 game before Manchester City. City have 2 games before they play Arsenal. You use it to
Mm-hmm.
their advantage. Use the rest time. Study Man City as much as you can. That should be
Yeah.
Arteta's message for the 26th of April. We've got 1 game. They've got 2 before this one. Make
Mm.
it count. Hammer Southampton.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. It will be interesting to see how they would respond to that, because again, they've had 2 games now where you could arguably say they perhaps should have beat at Liverpool at Anfield, like Xhaka or no Xhaka. I think that was just the narrative that kind of like was made a convenience. But the West Ham game was more telling because they let West Ham back in.
Yeah.
And it was, and it is unfortunately a symptom, but it is going to sound like a negative on Arsenal, but it actually really isn't. When you do like kind of look at the bare bones of it, this is the youngest team in the league, realistically speaking.
Yep.
Outside of the kind of the muting children that are at Southampton, but you have a team that is young and vibrant and energetic and full of fresh ideas, trying to go up against a team that are engineered to win every game, to the extent where the best team in the league end up going, do you know what? Let's just sign the best striker in the world just to add this little wrinkle to our game. And if that's not even enough, that you have the best striker and the best team with the best players, they're now making tactical tweaks that are being done for the first time ever. They're putting a right back into midfield in possession just so that they don't have this kind of symmetrical alignment when they're being countered. Like
3-2-4-1 is
yeah.
nuts. But that's how confident that City team are. They can put John Stones in midfield. It's nuts.
Yeah.
John Stones.
But that's the ludicrous part. It's a formation that was done previously in the 1930s. So they're using formation in a completely different way, in possession and out of possession and all these things. So this is what Arsenal are up against. Arsenal are up against a team that are so far ahead in their kind of like in their project that they can go like almost like on a whim, on a curiosity. What happens if we put this player here in this midfield and we retain all this possession? Because ultimately, the Man City team is all about control and never letting anyone have a sniff because that's how they win games. It is literally
Yep.
if you have the ball and you're doing something with it, no one can beat you. That is the realistically speaking.
Yep.
And then if someone does beat you by a fluky goal, whatever it is, complain about it and then buy someone for 100 million euro. That's the strategy. You know.
This is where City have the edge when it comes to competing now with Arsenal. Okay, so
Yeah.
you look at the last time they were out, City beat Leicester 3-1.
Hmm.
Now, in that starting lineup, Kyle Walker, Ruben Diaz, Laporte, John Stones, Rodri, Mahrez, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Jack Grealish, Haaland. Now, that was the starting lineup.
Hmm.
Then you look at the bench. Nathan Aki, Akanji, Phillips, Gundogan, Gomez, Alvarez.
Hmm.
Arsenal don't have
No, they don't. But then again,
that.
Arsenal were never going to have that. This is the thing. You see, this is why I draw the comparison to that to the Suarez season
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that was
We had little or no rotation then. I'm pretty sure
no,
Jake
no.
Spearing was still in the squad at that point.
He was almost certainly in the fucking. He was the third substitute in every
You know what
fucking
I
game
mean?
we had. But
So
that's the thing. You see, we were never going to win the league that season because it was too soon for us.
yeah,
And I fear it is too soon for this Arsenal side. But at the same token, you may not get another opportunity like this. So it's this trade off of like, do you go hell for leather? Of course you do. Like goes are saying, go out and win every game. You've only got 7 games left to worry about in your season.
yeah,
But it's that psychological aspect of it where like you've only got 7 games.
yeah.
You're
Are
no
they going to
longer
crumble
having,
on? Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
pressure of it all.
Are they going to
Whereas
crumble under the pressure? Odegaard, Xhaka, Partey, Martinelli, Jesus, Saka. That's a great midfield and front line. The
yeah,
back is really, really good as well. Ramsdale's had a great season, but
mm,
yeah, is it enough? Jorginho's not really been the signing they hoped he would be. Nketiah is really good. Trossard has been a bit lukewarm.
he's been fantastic. He's been a fantastic sub for them.
Oh, sub, yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean, I don't think he's going to want to stay that way. Do you know what I mean? He's going to want to
no,
start games, but you just have to. It's really frustrating with City's monetary power. It's really annoying. And guess what? We've not heard about in the last 6 to 7 months. Whatever
mm,
happened to the breaches of financial fair play? Not
yeah,
heard.
but
I've not heard anything about that
that's
in a
been
while.
conveniently gone quiet.
So,
But this conversation will come up again because there'll be teams looking at this going like if Arsenal were to fall short on this and they do like rack up an incredible
mhm.
points tally like we did on multiple occasions, you're looking at this going like if we didn't have a team that has literally bought their way to the league. And I've no shame in saying that. They have bought their way to the league because it's very easy to get yourself the best coach and the best players when you are funded by a state. That's easy. Anyone can do that. I did that when I was 10 on fucking Football Manager. That's fucking simple. You know, so when you're playing with the cheat codes, it's not fair. It isn't a fair fight. That
Yep.
is a prerequisite. So how much of an accomplishment is it for Arsenal to even be competing at this point in their project? Like you look at the likes of those players there, like Bukayo Saka is an incredible player for his age at the moment. He is absolutely phenomenal.
Mhm.
So is Martinelli. So is Odegaard. This is an incredibly likable Arsenal team that, in theory, as they get older, are going to get better and more clinical and more cynical in the way they play. They're not going to be making these kind of like mistakes for the sake of
No.
a bit of flair or like whatever it is. They're going to be putting results away. They're going to be scoring goals every game. So they're going to be a threat for season to season. The trouble is, look at the season we're having. No Liverpool in contention. No Chelsea. Man
Nope.
United, too preoccupied with the Europa League.
Too far off. They're too far off in the points tally.
Too far off.
They've dropped off
Newcastle,
completely.
Newcastle not there yet in terms of
Nope.
their footballing acquisition project. So this could very well stand as the only opportunity for Arsenal to win the league
Mhm.
because there will be people coming back. And I'm not even talking about those guys. Look at who else is coming out, who else is knocking about. You've got Villa, Brighton, and Brentford. As daft as it sounds, any one of those teams could hit afterburners and start looking to challenge the status quo. Because if
Mhm.
Brighton keep De Zerbi, if Brentford keep Thomas Frank, if Aston Villa still have Unai Emery, any of those teams can break from the pack and start chasing.
Yeah.
That is entirely possible.
Yep.
And look at the season we've had. It's no longer a pipe dream. It is happening. One of those teams is, well, if not like all three of those teams potentially are going to be European football.
Yep.
So it's happening already. Um, so it goes without saying, like for Arsenal, an opportunity. The trouble is, I think Arsenal now realize it. You know, the kind of way they realize that
Yep.
they are 7 games away from winning the Premier League, and that's where the real trouble is, because it's no longer
Yep.
about a game. You're now looking over your shoulder, or you're looking in front of you and seeing where Man City are. You're checking to see if they've lost a game
Mhm.
and seeing the pressure on or off. You know, um, but it goes without saying, the 26th of the April is the title decider,
Yep.
realistically speaking. Like you could see City dropping points at the end of the season, absolutely, but Arsenal could drop just as more.
Yeah.
So that's where it's going to get
Yep.
interesting. So yeah, that's it.
City's toughest games are kind of Fulham and Brentford.
They still
Brentford,
got
I
to play
think
Brighton,
Brentford,
haven't
I
they?
think I've done City this season already.
Yeah, they have.
You
Yeah.
know, so
Um,
it's going to be a tough game. Fulham, again, in form at the minute. They may be able to cause some trouble, but
they've
we'll
got
have to
Brighton
see.
as well, haven't they? That's
Yeah.
that's a
Mhm.
game yet to be scheduled. So
Brighton, not on the list yet, but I think, yeah, you just said it there. I think it's to be
yeah,
scheduled.
I think it's a game they were meant to have this weekend
Yeah.
out been for the FA Cup final. So semi-final even. But yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. Dave, while you're here, why don't we change tack from talking about the Premier League and talk about things more local? Well, not for yourself because you live in Edinburgh, but the League of Ireland, Dave, because you have
Yes.
a fair shake
Yes.
in this, as do we. So let's give the League of Ireland a bit of love, because
Oh, God, yeah.
um, we're a couple of. I got a hoop from the gallery there, but let's
Blue
talk about
shots.
the League of Ireland at the moment, because we've had a couple of match days. It's been a very, as often the case is with League of Ireland, it takes a month or two for everything to shake down, um, and
Yep.
we kind of establish outright where everyone is standing at the moment. But it is a fascinating league so far, Dave. Of course, you have your own vested interests that we will understand, but how do you feel the League of Ireland's gone so far?
It's weird. It's a weird ass season, Jonathan, so far.
Hmm.
There's no other way of looking at it. You can take the message that I put in that chat that we have about
Hmm.
6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, where St. Pat's were absolute an absolute shambles. They were losing
Hmm.
heavily. They were losing games. Now they're second in the league. Don't know how the hell that happens. But God
Hmm.
bless Chris Forrester, is all I'll say. Bo's top of the league. No, no, just no. That's not allowed to happen. It's just a season where, like you said, the Premier League, the status quo has been completely flipped on its ear. Pats and Bows finished in the bottom half, I'm pretty sure, last season, out at the top of the table. It's weird.
Hmm.
Um Shell's in fifth. They'll be in seventh. They'll go down to seventh and stay there. It'll be the same as last season. Nothing changes under Duffer.
Hmm.
And that's me fired from LOI TV. Um Derry
It's okay, no one's got listed.
Derry City, like Derry or Derry. They've been great the last couple of seasons. They'll climb and they'll continue to climb that table. They're in the top three anyway.
Hmm.
But I still I'm still not come to terms with the fact that why UCD is still out in that league. It makes no sense to me.
Because as often the case is, there was the team worse than them last year. It's always the way. Like, so
But they
someone worse stays in. Like, you know.
five fans, university team. Well, not actually university team anymore. I don't think.
Hmm.
Um, Cork. I thought they would have done better. A couple of good results at the start of the season. Drogheda are doing okay.
Hmm.
Drogheda are actually a good team to watch. They're one of those teams that kind of flies under the radar and no one really pays attention. But Shamrock Rovers have been the biggest story of the season so far. Only in a sense that there's a couple of results where you would have expected them to absolutely drive through the wall,
Hmm.
5-1, 6-0, whatever it is, and they've lost. Rovers have had a bit of a shaky start to the season, but we're only 10 games in.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like,
Rovers will come back to form without a
well,
shadow of a doubt.
this is the point I was going to make, because like Rovers are kind of the the proverbial kind of like top team in
Mm-hmm.
the Irish League. And I think I don't like using that kind of phrase because the Irish League is a very transient league. Like you have players jumping back and forth between clubs
Yep.
all the time. But I think Rovers and outside of them and perhaps Bows and St. Pat's, like a lot of them have a bit more of a kind of a consistency to them. They're able to they're
Mm-hmm.
retaining players a lot more now. But but by all means, like Rovers will certainly pride themselves in saying we have the best squad.
Yep.
And I think that's a fairly fair comment. Um, Now that being said, I think last season it was kind of the same issue where they're a bit of a slow starter, but I think there's a certain degree of pacing going on as well because this is it's a strange league in terms of the fixtures. There's always like blocks of fixtures. You'll
Yeah.
have like 2 games per week for a couple of weeks and then nothing for a month. And then
Yeah.
you go again and same thing happens. So everything's kind of done in stages. And also because you're facing all of these teams 4 times instead of your kind of traditional two,
Yeah.
it's not that big a disaster if you lose a Dublin Derby, for example, because you're going to
Yeah.
have 3 more. You're going to have one next week. You'll be all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And if you don't face them in the fucking cup games, then you're all right.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I see Rovers as like slow start as a fair kind of criticism
Mm.
because, yeah, they probably should have beaten Sligo and Drogheda, but they were too busy getting their player sent off.
They always
And
struggle against Shells, especially away from home. They've been known to kind of that's always their dodgy fixture. You never
yeah,
know how it's going to go. But I mean, when you look at Rovers' squad, it is pretty much the same as last year with the addition of maybe
Liam Burt
Johnny
would be the big
Johnny
one.
Kenny, um,
Yeah,
Ian Burt, yeah. So
and Trevor Clark as well.
yeah,
Um,
so there's been a couple of
after going
additions, but
this, yeah,
for the most part, it's been you look at the team that faced Shelbourne: Roy Gaffney,
Mm,
Graham Burke, Jack Byrne, Dylan Watts, Lee Gray, Sean Hoare, Dan Clare, all there last season. You know,
yeah,
there's just Neil Frugia as well. There, I mean, the team hasn't changed that much. Not that it needed to change,
no,
but the more you keep the same rhythm, the more other teams are going to catch on. The more you're going to get a little bit
mm,
more found out as time goes on. And I think it's, I really think that Stephen Bradley just needs to use the players he brought in, shake it up a bit. You know,
mm.
I'd love to see Aaron Green get a bit more of a start. I'd love to
Yeah,
see
I would agree with that.
I'd love to see Ronan Finn get a little bit more game time.
Mm,
Um, Johnny Kenny's come in from Celtic. You know, he's not really, I wouldn't say he's a starter, but I mean, he got game time last time against Shells. Use him a little bit more in the cup games and that. If you give him a
mm,
few more minutes in, say, the Leinster Senior Cup or early in the FAI Cup, give him a couple of minutes. Just switch it up a bit. Because looking at that bench, you could have easily played Aaron Green. Aaron Green is kryptonite to Shells.
mm.
He loves a goal against Shells. He'll rip it up against. He has done at Talbot Park so many times. He should be starting the game against Shells.
Yeah,
Realistic in my eyes, anyway. Um, but yeah, I just think they'll get there. I'm not worried about Rovers. They'll get near the top in a couple of weeks' time.
mm,
Give them, yeah, as I said, it's only 10 games gone in this season. Um, Shelbourne's main aim for this season was to keep hold of the players they had last season.
yeah,
Keep and hold of players like Jack Moylan, who's phenomenal. Matty Smith signed a new deal.
yeah,
These are players that Shells had to keep a hold of. They managed to get Tyreek Wilson, which is a big, massive signing for Damien Duff because he was horrible for Shells last season.
mm,
And obviously on the opposing side, what I mean is he was absolutely torture for Shells to try and defend against, especially from a dead ball situation. Brian McManus, Shane Griffin, Shane Farrell, all these young lads are really exciting footballers to watch.
mm.
Same thing again from Duffer, 5-3-2. I've seen a lot all last season. You know, I was there, I've seen it. Probably going to be a lot of the same this season. They're sitting between fifth and seventh, nothing new.
Mm,
They'll stay in the league, but they won't. I can't see any progression this season, unfortunately. Same players, same style, couple of new faces in.
mm.
Nothing really changed that much.
It's actually one of those rare seasons, actually. And again, maybe this is kind of like showing that there is some level of kind of consistency coming into the Irish League now.
Mm.
Is that you haven't actually seen that massive reshuffling that we've had for historically in the league, where clubs just release their players en masse, and it's almost like a draft almost getting them back into place. And I do feel it is the likes of I don't think it's Rovers as such, but I think it's more so Derry having that
Yeah,
kind of that financial power to be able to go. Let's tie down Patrick McElhaney. Let's tie down these kind of like prominent players because then it forces other teams to do the same. Then like Dundalk technically have done the same thing themselves, but they are
yeah.
buying in from other leagues and trying to
Hmm.
moneyball their way out of whatever hole they're in, and we'll get to them in a minute. But
Yeah.
sorry, from the Rovers' point of view, like I was there for 2 home games this season, on my kind of like quest to actually like actually enjoy football for once in my life. So I was there for the Derry game, which we lost, and then the Pats game, the Lewis Derby, which is a
Hmm.
hilarious name for a derby. Um, and I will say like funny enough, the 2-2 draw I think is probably the best performance I've seen of them. Like I've seen the Bowls game and I've seen
Yeah.
the Dart game as well. And I do genuinely think that the Lewis Derby was their best performance. Mainly because you could actually see the turning point in the team where they kind of everything started to click again. Because with Derry, their issue was that they were playing basically one natural centre back and everyone else was cobbled together basically. So we knew what the problem there was. But the
Hmm.
fear for me was the actual the defense was one issue, but the actual the way the attackers kind of linked together was the problem, because Rovers are one of those teams that use their width to death. Like that is the central point of their
Yep.
game is wing backs and wingers
Hmm.
feed, and basically whoever is in the box is cleaning up essentially, whether
Yep.
it be Gaffney or Green, basically is proverbially just like stay in the box, you pick
Yep.
up anything that you find and score from there. And if that
Mm.
doesn't work, you've got Jack Byrne behind you, you've got Graham Burke behind you, Richie Tell, Gary O'Neill, anyone can take a pot shot. And now you've got this new lad, Marcus Poom, who is
Yep.
a decent, decent at the dead ball as well.
Yep.
So you've got choices there. I see your point about Johnny Kenny as well. I think he is very much there to press more than anything
Yeah.
else. He is there because he's got a lot of pace, a lot of energy. Again, he's only 19 from Celtic, so
Yep.
he's in good shape. He is there to stretch the back line and make space for whoever's pinching on the flanks.
Agreed.
So
Yep.
he serves a tactical purpose
Absolutely.
more than Gaffney does, you know.
True.
And I think if there's one problem with Rovers is that I think Bradley gets lost in his tactics a bit too much, you know, where obviously a route one approach would work if you're fucking 2-1 down to Derry. Don't pass around the keeper. Don't pass it back. Just fucking lump it forward and see what happens. You've got the pace. You've
Yep.
got the speed up front. Use it. You know, um, and that would be the one kind of like problem I would have with the Rovers team at the minute. But then after like seeing that Lewis Derby for they smashing Dundalk at home, away from home, then beating Bowes in the Derby, then smashing UCD, and
Yeah.
yeah, the Shells game 2-2, fair enough. I think that's a fair result. Um, but like even then that the actual the consistency and the form are starting to come back to them now. Because again, the team is just starting to bed it back in again.
Yep.
As you said, I think the only real change to that squad this season has like the starting 11 itself has probably been Trevor Clark.
Yeah.
Um, Now we have him on loan, I think, from one of the Bristol teams. I think it's Bristol
Yeah.
Rovers, I think. So we need to use him basically. Is the moral of the story. I think we have him
Yeah.
for 2 years, I think. But we need to use him basically. And he is serving as the kind of as a better left wing back option than say, I don't know, who else would you have in there? Sean Kavanagh. He
Yeah.
can now play behind him and be more defensively solid. So he's a better option. It means that Faruja can do the same thing, same job on the other side.
Mm.
Um, so I think that will serve us well then. Um, as you said there, I feel like we're starting to start feel like showing our supremacy a little bit, but we do have a bit of a gap to pull on the likes of Bowes, and
Yeah.
I feel there's more in the Derry team as well. Like I've seen them
Mm.
play. They're a tough L team, and they've got a lot of counter attacking power.
Derry have been
So
like that. Derry have been like
yeah,
that for a long time. They won the FAI Cup
mm,
last season against Shelbourne
yeah,
quite decisively. Um, Again, they're another team that'll be up there, but I think the biggest thing Bowes have done was get rid of Keith Long. It was the smartest decision they could have made.
Yeah.
There was no attack under Keith Long. There was no final ball. There's no final third with Keith Long. He was getting nil-nils, losing 1-0, 1-1. It was just a horrible football to watch
Mm.
under Keith Long. But Declan Devine has brought this team right up. Getting Patrick Kirk in from Sligo was a massive swoop for
Mm.
Bowes. He was really good last season. He scored a couple for Sligo. He's a very pacey, very technical left back. He can push
Yeah.
forward when he wants to. He's been probably the biggest thing that Bowes have brought in. And Jonathan Afolabi just seems to work really well under Declan Devine. He
Mm.
wasn't great under Keith Long. It stalled his career even more so under Keith Long than it did
Mm.
previously. He moved over to try and get his career back on track. And I think under Declan Devine that'll work.
Yeah.
It's why Bowes are top of the league. I think bringing in Patrick Kirk, switching to a 4-2-3-1, and all these players are just, especially Declan McDade as well. These players are playing much better under Declan Devine than they were under Keith Long. There's only been a
Yeah.
few additions to the side, but it's made the world of difference having him come in and manage this team. From a Derry
Mm.
City point of view, I've been nothing but impressed with them the last few seasons. I really have. Um, Even just to watch, they've been really impressive. And this season, they've had okay, Dundalk 2-2 was a bit, lost against Bowes, lost against Strada, beat Shells. Not been the most impressive start to the season. But again, they're like Rovers, they'll get there. The
Yeah.
Rovers Derry City kind of thing was always the last few seasons, always been up and down, up and down, up and down.
Mm.
Dundalk have been a joy for me to watch slip only because, I'd say over the last 10 years or so, maybe 10, 12 years, there's been a bit of self entitlement from Dundalk. There's been a bit of,
Mm.
I'm all for a bit of a swagger and a bit of cockiness and that, but respect your opponents. They've not really done that.
Yeah.
They had the European money with Stephen Kenny. I think that's all but dried up now. The ownership, I think, is changing or has changed.
It has changed. Yeah.
Has changed. That's a big factor. They pull the purse strings even tighter now. So there's not as much money for Dundalk to pump into the squad like they used to be able to. I mean, they had
Hmm.
players like Daryl Horgan at one point at Dundalk, and they had the cream of the crop of Irish football. That's been Rovers now the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
They're coming back up to what they were before Dundalk started the massive run of form. But Dundalk are getting a real reality check this season, and I
Hmm.
don't like to see any team fail. When I say I'm happy about it, it's just them coming smack down to earth to where you have to realize your purse strings are tightened even further now. You can't just go out and splash money on big players and big names.
Hmm.
Rovers can, but Rovers have been smart. They've really good financial partnerships. They have a really good partnership that they signed with Celtic for I don't know how many years. Celtic are funding Rovers in order to bring through, it's almost like a feeder system for Celtic
Yeah.
ultimately. But that works in their favor because the money's coming through at that from that, the revenue from sponsorship, everything. Rovers have just done it really, really smart.
Yeah.
And I think the league this year has been really enjoyable because of that complete unknown factor of Pats and Bows are top of the league.
Mm.
Push the second. Bows first, Pats second. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen that coming. I would if you had asked me where our Pat's going to finish, we'll probably finish out so fifth, sixth, mid table, but we'll
Mm.
probably start slow, down the bottom half. But second in the league, I'll take it all day long. 10 games gone. You know, yeah, I'll take it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's certainly like considering we're literally already at the quarter point of the
Mm,
league season. Now, obviously, like the fixtures are truncate are compressed in a certain way to
mm,
accommodate for cup games, and then obviously towards the summer we have like European games to worry about, and
mm.
hopefully trying to break into one of the three competitions that's available to us. So there's going to be different challenges over the season. So certainly for the likes of a Rovers or even a Bows, it's important to lock down your league position early so that you can potentially prioritize those cup games and
Mm.
European ties as well, because there is a serious financial emphasis on getting into Europe. Like that's a big benefit of the
Yeah,
Conference League is to actually get the money, the UEFA money in there,
yeah.
as paltry as it is for some of them.
Yeah,
But
that's where these two teams like Bows and Pats are going to benefit. When
yeah,
Rovers have these European ties, Derry City have these European ties. they're going to be going, oh, we don't have those ties. We didn't make
Mm-hmm.
Europe last season.
Very
So
true. Yeah.
we're going to make that count almost.
Mm.
Um, but I think financially, Derry and Rovers will be sound from Europe next few seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see Rovers get another good run in the Conference League like they did last season. That was great to watch.
Yeah.
That was great to watch. Having an Irish team in the group stage was fantastic. Now the results didn't really go their way, but nonetheless,
But at
to
least
be
they're already in the competition, so they get the money out of it.
yeah,
That's the big thing
mm-hmm.
for them. Because again, we're at the stage where like if we want these teams to get bigger and better, Europe is the way to go. The League of Ireland
Yeah,
isn't enough.
it's
You know?
sustainable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
sustainable competition because if Rovers are going to continuously be in that first, second spot year after year, then it's
Mm,
sustainable. Whereas with Dundalk, it dropped off, didn't it? They weren't
exactly. Yeah.
consistently getting European football, so the money was patchy. But with Rovers, it's just a constant stream of European revenue over and
Mm,
over and over. Same with Derry. But if Pats and Bows could start getting into those European positions of fighting for that third spot consistently over the seasons, then you will see an upswing then, probably
yeah.
from one of them coming up. And that'll be your top four then. Your
Mm,
Rovers, Derry City, Pats and Bows.
yeah. And and even if we were to take a guess at a League of Ireland table, that's typically how it kind of shakes out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You do have a bit of a surprise package every season just by the nature of a tight
Yeah.
league like this, you know. You will probably like I don't know what you define the surprise package. Probably Drogheda actually at the moment.
Drogheda, now this is
Yeah.
the thing. Drogheda have been said to be on like a massive, having a great season. But they did the same last year. They had some big results last year. They beat Dundalk last
Mm,
year in the derby twice, I think. They
yeah.
had some great results last year and kind of went a little bit unnoticed.
Mm,
This season they've had a good start, whereas those results kind of came in the middle of the season for them. Now they've
yeah.
had a good start. I think Drogheda will be safe. I think they're kind of fifth, sixth is where they want to be, mid table.
Mm,
Um, but no, they're doing really well. They've had a great start. They've been really good to watch as well. Really good
mm,
style of football. But I think they will be the surprise package this season, especially if they can finish above Sligo and if they finish above Dundalk.
yeah.
That's their aim for the season. If we can finish above Dundalk, they're sending a message then.
Which is very likely considering how troubled that team
Yeah,
looks like at the moment. So yeah,
yeah.
very true. So yeah, fair enough. Well, Dave, I think it would be remiss of me if we didn't sign off this podcast by
Mm-hmm.
talking about your adopted home. The SPL looks relatively wrapped up at the minute.
It is. It's coming up to the split now.
Yeah,
Obviously there's a
talk us
split
through this because
in top
we
six,
don't
bottom
talk about
six.
the SPL that much, but they've taken a kind of a note from some other leagues in Europe where they split the league. So talk us through that
Mm-hmm.
for those uninitiated.
So from the SPL standpoint, the league is played up to 33 games. The final five are then done in a split. So the league splits top six, bottom six. The top six get a bye. So the way it's done is the top six will have four European spots, depending on who wins the Scottish Cup. Obviously, if Celtic or Rangers win the Scottish Cup, then goes down to fifth. So you have an extra European spot for the Conference League first
Mm-hmm.
round. So realistically, you want to finish in that top six. The other benefit of finishing in the top six is you don't go into the League Cup in a group stage. So the League Cup is done in group stages now. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
straight knockout tournament. So the top six will get an automatic buy into the last 16, whereas all the bottom six will then be in the group stages of the League Cup, be against
Yeah.
teams from Championship, League One, and League Two, all mixed in. Whoever wins the group gets out and into the last 16.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the league works is the final five fixtures are played in a split format. Top six, you have five. Bottom six, you have five. So Hibs will play against St Mirren, Hearts, Aberdeen, Rangers, and Celtic. One more fixture. Home and away depends on who you've already played at home, who you've already played away.
Yeah.
It balances out like that. So at the minute, it's looking like Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts, St Mirren, who have no right being in that top six. They have no right being there, but they've earned the right to be there. You want to talk about surprise packages? St Mirren have been phenomenal this season.
Yeah.
Stephen Robinson's just absolutely he has that team playing some football that I've never seen St. Mirren play, even under Jack Ross when he had them promote from the championship, even under um who was the Aberdeen manager now? Jim
Goodwin.
Goodwin.
Yeah.
Goodwin under, Goodwin managing St. Mirren, they played some great football, but it was never like this, never top six,
Mm.
always kind of scraping around the top of the bottom six area.
Yeah.
Um, but St. Mirren have been fantastic. If they can finish top six this season, they can be really proud of what they've done. The
Mm.
biggest fall has been from Ross County, who are bottom of the league. They're staring relegation in the face. It's really tight down there. There's only 1 point between the bottom three teams. Dundee United, Kilmarnock, Ross County. Kilmarnock have only come up. Derek McInnes' style of football has been a bit.
Mm.
Um, it's never easy when you come up from the championship. It is sometimes going to be a real struggle to stay up there. St. Johnstone have got rid of Callum Davidson as their manager yesterday.
Yeah.
That shocked me a little bit. They're not in trouble.
Mm.
They're not out of the woods as far as relegation is concerned, but they were worse off last year than they are this year. They're
Yeah.
sitting in ninth place. They're not in the relegation zone just yet, but they were there for most of last season and they kept on to him. Now
Mm.
they've gotten rid of him. Now, this is a manager who brought them the Scottish Cup and League Cup in the same season a few seasons ago, right? Historic for the club. 2 trophies in one season. Unbelievable. Got rid of him yesterday. It really puzzled me.
Mm.
Now, it must have been a mutual thing because there's no way you get rid of a manager like that. St. Johnston weren't doing all that bad. They weren't.
Yeah.
They had some decent results recently. They've had a couple of wins. Dundee United, bottom of the table for a majority of the season, lifted themselves off of two wins on the trot for Dundee United, have put them a point out of the relegation zone, but only a point. So Ross County,
Yeah.
Kilmarnock, and Dundee United will fight it out for who's going to be the relegation, who's going to be in the playoff spot. So the second from bottom has a playoff with
Yeah.
the winner of the second in the championship.
Yeah. So it's the second of the Scottish Championship, isn't it?
Yeah. So the way the playoffs work is actually no, I'll tell a lie. Fourth in the championship will play Kilmarnock, right? If Kilmarnock lose that, they're gone.
Okay.
Now you have a new team going to be relegated regardless of what happens.
Mm.
It happened with Edinburgh City last season. They beat Dumbarton in the first set of playoffs. They finished fourth in League
Yeah.
Two, but they got promoted because they relegated Dumbarton in the first legs. They played the second bottom of League One, beat
Mm-hmm.
them. Then they beat Annan Athletic, who were the winners of um second and third. So they played
Yeah.
off against each other. So the same thing happens here. So the second last team go into a playoff
Mm-hmm.
to fight for their survival in the Premiership. So only one team from the Championship is guaranteed to go up. The playoffs are not guaranteed because Kilmarnock could win the 2 rounds. If
Yeah.
they beat the team in fourth, they go up against the winners of second and third. And if they beat them, they stay up. Now, it
Mm-hmm.
happened when Chris Boyd played for Kilmarnock 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to stay up. They were in the relegation playoffs, same place they're in now. But they managed to stay up because they won the 2 sets of rounds. So they stayed in the Premiership. Nobody went up from the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it works. So it's the top six, bottom six, second last goes into a playoff to fight for their survival. Bottom team completely out of the running. They just get straight
Yeah.
relegation.
Sit down. Yeah.
Third and fourth are Conference League. Second is Champions League, funnily enough, and top is Champions League.
Yeah, because the Scottish League were one of the big beneficiaries of the Russian exclusion from
Mm-hmm.
UEFA. They got their second
Yeah.
Champions League
Yep.
entry back, as it were.
So there's 4 spots now, but it depends on because Celtic can drop into the Europa League. Rangers obviously went to the Europa League final
Yeah.
a few seasons ago. So that Europa League spot isn't there in the league, but
Yeah.
the
You
Champions
get it
League
through
spots can
being
drop down.
eliminated. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So that's the Scottish League. I know in Ireland the Scottish League isn't really
Mm,
it's not really popular, I will say, in Ireland. Um very little eyes from Ireland are on the Scottish League
mm,
unless you actually live here, work here, and are around it all of the time. It's very hard to kind of watch it. It's very hard to get into it because
yeah.
not really involved. I mean, Celtic obviously have a massive Irish contingent who go over from Dublin all season long who go to Celtic games
Mm-hmm. Of
because Celtic have had, the affiliation with Irish players over the years. Packy Bonner being the biggest,
course, yeah.
probably the biggest name in that kind of links the two, Ireland and Celtic.
Mm,
Roy Keane, Robbie Keane, both Keanes played for Celtic at one point in their careers. Um, there's always been that affiliation throughout Celtic's history.
mm,
So Celtic in
mm,
from an Irish point of view is the most supported club, Scottish club
mm.
in Ireland. So that's the only kind of eyes you have on the Scottish League is Celtic, realistically.
Yeah,
Celtic or Rangers. That's it. That's
yeah.
what that's and it's a shame because it's a big league with some pretty big attendances. Like
Mm,
Hibs sold out the Edinburgh Derby there the other day at the weekend, and that's 20,900 and something.
yeah.
It's a 21,000 attendance. Average of 15. Hearts are the same, average of 15. Aberdeen get about 11, 12,000.
Mm,
You know, Motherwell will get 7 or 8. Dundee United, if they're playing well, will get 9, 10,000.
mm.
You know, the crowds are there, the support is there, but it's only in within Scotland itself. It's very hard to break into that
Yeah.
global market unless you are a Celtic or Rangers who have had the consistency over their entire
Mm.
lifespan. Celtic have
Yeah.
won the European trophy. Celtic have been in the Champions League group stages. They have had the big
Mm.
names like Henrik Larsson, Nakamura, all of these foreign players who have come
Yeah.
in and been heroes. You know, they've had some really, really famous Scottish players as well, but the foreign players are the ones that, bring in the eyes
Yeah.
from
The
outside.
fan favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
The Celtic have had that consistency over the entirety. Rangers, although they're only a new club,
Mm.
um, which I love saying all the time,
Yeah.
formed in 2012, as you know. Um,
Totally unrelated to Glasgow Rangers, of
Glasgow
course.
Rangers had a very successful lifespan. The Rangers have had one trophy in their entire
Yeah.
lifespan. But yeah, I mean, look, Hibs have been getting bigger in the Irish support.
Yeah.
The supporters club went over to um the birthplace of the founder.
Mm.
So the founder of Hibs was from the west of Ireland. And they went over to unveil a plaque in his hometown
Mm.
in the west of Ireland. And there was a big deal made about it locally in papers and stuff like that. Because basically Hibs was founded by, an Irishman.
Mm.
It was the first Irish club in Scotland. It was founded by an Irishman for Irish immigrants. For
Mm.
something for them to do on a Sunday. Hibs then in turn helped form Celtic, gave them kits, gave
Yeah.
them players, so on and so forth. So there is that original lineage between Hibs and Ireland. In my opinion, and as unbiased as I can be, they are the only Irish club in Scotland because Celtic were formed in Glasgow, again by an Irish person for the working class, but
Mm.
majority Scottish.
Yeah.
For Hibs, it was Ireland. James Connolly, for God's sake, was one of the founders.
Mm.
Can't get a bigger name than that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
James
Exactly.
Connolly has a memorial in Edinburgh in the Cowgate which was called Little Ireland at the time.
Mm.
He was born there. That's where he's from. He helped found Hibs. It's absolutely steeped in Irish, you know,
Mm.
heritage, effectively. Um Edinburgh is a massive Now, unfortunately, Edinburgh is a very heavily draped in rugby because
Yeah.
it's where Scotland play, and out west in Glasgow is where the Scottish national team play,
Mm.
which sucks because Hampden is a fucking nightmare to get to. But because Scottish rugby play in Edinburgh, it's a very, very heavily biased towards rugby. Football gets looked down upon in Edinburgh, whereas in
Mm.
Glasgow it's celebrated. It's the big
Because you
thing.
have Celtic and Rangers
Yeah,
there
you
and
have
things.
Celtic and
Yeah.
Rangers there. There is no, Glasgow Warriors are the only rugby team there. But in
Yeah.
Edinburgh, you have Edinburgh rugby. You've got the Scottish national team who play in Murrayfield up the road.
Mm.
All of the school rugby teams are massive, massive money in them. There's massive followings. Rugby's huge in Edinburgh. Glasgow,
Yeah.
not so much. Glasgow's all football, which is why Hampden Park is there and the SFA are there and all that stuff. But I would love to see more of a link between Irish and Scottish football.
Yeah.
I would like to see more players being loaned out to Irish teams. I would like to see Irish teams taking a bit more interest in younger players from Scottish top flight.
Mm.
Maybe bringing in players to the championship level permanently.
Yeah.
That's the kind of level that the League of Ireland is on, that championship level. Um, but yeah, that's how the Scottish League works. That's a little bit of background on some of the clubs.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's been a crazy season so far. We're literally 3 games from the end of the season now, 3 or 4 games from the season finishing. So,
Mm.
well, 6 games for the Premiership. For me, in League One, 3 games left.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be an interesting finish the season. Hibs are not in the top 6 yet. They have to win a few more games in order to they have to win their next game in order to
Get through. Yeah.
get through into a top 6 for split.
Mm.
If they lose and Livingston win, Livingston have to win and Hibs have to lose in order for Livingston to finish in top 6.
Mm-hmm.
If Hibs, yeah, Hibs have to lose, Livingston have to win their next game in order for them to leapfrog us in top 6. If Hibs draw and Livingston win, Livingston still leapfrog. So Hibs have to win the next game in
Yeah.
order
Either
to
way. Yeah.
finish, and they have to hope that Livingston lose. So that's how that works. That's funny because there's been seasons in the past few years where the person or the team in 7th has finished on higher points than the team in 6th, but they've still finished 7th, which I
That is
find
a quite.
hilarious.
That is a really weird quirk of the league, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you're 7th in the league and you finish on 58 points, but a team in 6th finishes on 52, you're still 7th. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's split. That's how it
That is quite
works.
weird. Yeah.
But yeah, that's Scottish football in a nutshell.
Mm.
I work across various different leagues in Scotland, Championship, League One, Premiership, and I love all of the leagues personally, right the
Mm.
way down to the regional leagues. I've gone to games in each division as low as you can get.
Mm.
In the amateurs, same thing. There's tons of teams across Edinburgh. There's absolutely loads of teams. But football just doesn't get the exposure it should do in Edinburgh. But that's
Yeah.
just the way the city is. But yeah, that's Scottish football in a nutshell.
Mm.
It's similar to Irish football. You have the Leinster Senior League. Here you've got the Scottish Lowland League and the Highland League split into two.
Yeah.
So the way the pyramid works here is the winner of the Lowland League plays the winner of the Highland League to get into the SPFL proper.
Yeah.
To get into League Two. So anything below League Two is not SPFL, it's the Lowland League. Then
Yeah.
you
It's
have the
a
East,
proverbial
West.
conference league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you have the East of Scotland below the Lowland League, East of Scotland, West of Scotland Premier, East of Scotland Premier, Southern Scotland Premier, and the Highland League as well, just above where the Lowland League is. So you've got the regionals, East of Scotland, West of Scotland Premier. Then you've got East of Scotland Division 1, Division 2, Division
Mm.
3. I'm boring the whole off my cat here. You just can't really see.
Yeah, that's good.
But
He's
yeah.
heard you do that talk many times.
Yeah. I haven't actually. No, nobody's ever asked me to explain Scottish football before. But no, honestly, nobody has ever asked me to explain
Fair
Scottish
enough. Fair
football.
enough.
So,
First time for everything in this podcast.
I've done it as best as I can without going on for 2.5 hours. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
very good. Grand. Well, then we are actually going to lead the podcast on this. Dave, do you have any other business before we sign off for full time in this podcast?
No, I don't. I will gladly talk about the split after the next fixture on the next one if you'll
Mm,
have me.
of
Um,
course.
but yeah, other than that, it's on to Arsenal and City on the 26th. It's on to
Yeah.
the next round in the League of Ireland on Friday night, slash Saturday, depending on who Sligo are playing.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, it's just look, football doesn't. Thankfully for us, football doesn't stop. Ireland is summer football,
Yeah,
so it doesn't
exactly.
really
Even
stop.
better.
And the transfer window opens, so you've got Irish football transfer windows, all the gossip, all the talk. So yeah, we'll work on to the weekend, see how the fixtures go, and
Go
as
from
always,
there.
we'll
Yeah.
have tons to talk about in the next one.
Absolutely. I mean, football gives us plenty of headlines, doesn't it? So,
Mm-hmm.
either way, we're going to call this episode to a close. And I'm going to thank my good friend Dave for jumping on for this episode.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
Giving us a lovely local flavor to this podcast. It wasn't just the Premier League we were talking about. We gave something for all the
Mhm.
domesticated people at home who wanted to hear more about their own game. So there you go. We'll try and make a habit of that, especially as the Premier League starts to wind to a
Oh
tragic
yeah,
close. Man City wins the league.
League of Ireland is definitely one I'll always want to give more exposure to.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Absolutely.
So with that, then we shall leave it there, folks, because all of that you've listened to has been Liquid Football, and we'll see you for the next round.